always forget to hit it. As a reminder, if you are not muted, please mute yourself because you are not you're not auto muted when you come in the meeting.
Probably need my bag. So, I'll come back and get it.
Everyone, please double check that you're muted. I can see there's a few of you that are not. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. You're also welcome to unmute yourself and stop me and ask a question if you would like. The recording to this meeting, as well as the slides, will be sent out to everyone who attended this meeting and those who fill out the letter of intent. They also will be posted on the 21st Century website. Everything you need to be able to apply for the grant will be posted on the 21st Century website. So you should be able to find everything there, but if you have any questions, you're always welcome to email me. Quick disclaimers. Although I work at the Utah State Board of Education, I am not representing any of the members of the board, and the things I say today do not necessarily coincide with the opinions of elected officials. So if you say something you don't like or disagree with, please do not call up your board member of the district you live in and tell them you're mad at them. This is a federal grant, and some of the things I say, I worked at the Utah After School Network for a bit before that, so some of you may have known me from there. And then the fiscal team with this grant is Clint Hoke and Marilee Wendell. So you might occasionally, if you get the grant, you're emailing me about a question, is this an allowable cost? Or if there was an issue with a reimbursement you submit, you might hear me loop in Marilee and Clint. They help me do the reimbursements and keep me on track doing the accounting and things like that. So the background information for this grant, the official name is the Nita M. Lowy 21st Century Community Learning Centers Grant Program. It is quite the mouthful. It is always fun when I have to tell people what my job is, and I say, I work at the Utah State Board of Education, and I run the 21st Century Community Learning Centers Grant. It's a lot. So you'll usually hear me refer to it as 21st Century, or you'll see it typed out as 21st CCLC. This funding does come from the Federal Department of Education, and we are part of the legislation that created the title programs. So the one you're most familiar with is Title I, which is funding for schools with a large population of low-income families. But that's not the only title there is. There's Title II, Title III, Title IV, Title V, Title VI, and we are Title IV-B. So if you're interested in that, there's a lot of other grant programs that are available to you for students who are homeless, students who are learning English as a second language, lots of things that these title programs actually cover that you can all apply for. Each state receives an allocation from the Department of Education based on census poverty data. It's the same data they use to determine Title I programming. So I have no control over how much funding we get from the federal government. And that is to say, it is a 5-year grant, and we'll tell you we're giving you all 5 years, but with the disclaimer that that is always dependent on the amount of funds we get from the federal government. It is always possible. It hasn't happened in, I don't even know how long. It's been a very long time, but it's always possible that this funding could be cut or reduced at any moment. But so far it hasn't. So far we've been somewhat steadily increasing. And then there is a federal 21st Century Grant Program webpage with resources, as well as the USBE 21st Century Grant webpage has everything you need. So like I said, today we'll continue going over the purposes and requirements of the grant, And then at the end is when the second half, we'll go over the application procedure and all the documents you'll need for that. I did that. I kind of flipped the order a little bit so that if by the end of the explanation, you're like, this actually is not the grant we're looking for, this is not going to meet our needs, then you don't have to listen to everything about how to apply if you decide you don't need to. And then as a reminder, please feel free to put your questions in the chat if you have them. Some resources that you might want to look into if you are intending on applying. One is the USBE Child Nutrition Program. You'll see later on in the allowable costs that we currently are not allowing dinner. The only food you can pay for is a healthy snack. But whether or not no matter what you're doing with your food, you can try and get on the child nutrition program, and they will reimburse you costs you spend on feeding students. So that's a great way to take something that doesn't need to be in your budget. You can get reimbursed for that. Also, USBE Adult Education. You'll see in a minute that one of the purposes of this grant is not just to run an after-school program, but to serve the families of after-school students. So we try and make sure we have adult education resources so that you can think about what services can we offer to the parents of students that are at our school or in our program. The next resource is the Utah After School Network. Most of you hopefully have heard of them. If you do receive this grant, you will be working with the Utah After School Network. They provide all sorts of resources and training, professional development, technical assistance to after-school programs. They are our official technical assistance provider. So they really help increase the quality of programming. They run conferences. You'll be assigned a specific specialist that works directly with you. And even if you do not have a 21st Century grant, their website is still full of resources. You're still welcome to attend their conferences. They have a whole resource library full of curriculum and activity ideas that anyone can access. Similar to the National Technical Assistance Center, this one is brand new. It is hot off the presses. The website is actually not even 100% done. The National Technical Assistance Center is in partnership with the U.S. Department of Education, and they have created this website to be a resource specifically for 21st century programming. But similar to Utah After School Network, it will have a library of trainings and modules and videos and curriculum that will be accessible to anyone who works with youth or works in out of school time. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to see how it develops over the next couple of months. U4Youth is a similar resource for after school time. And then the dual capacity framework is also a resource for family engagement. So grant information review. The purposes of 21st Century. There are 3 purposes to this grant that I believe firmly are equally of importance. The first one is academic enrichment, so tutoring, having some sort of academic time during your out of school time. That one is the one most people think of when they think of after school, and they think of quality after school, especially when we talk to people during the school day. They really want those academics, and it is very important to have some time, but I think it's equally important to have these additional services. So things like drug and violence prevention, counseling programs, art, music, recreation, technology education, character education programs that are designed to reinforce and complement regular academic programming. So this is really our enrichment activities, our STEM activities, our art, our nutrition classes, cooking classes. We are going to go outside and play soccer, and we're going to learn how to dribble a soccer ball today. I think sometimes when we talk to school day, sometimes people get a little like, oh, I don't want some kids just running around playing soccer during after school. Aren't there better uses of their time? And my response to that is no, there are not better uses of their time. If we're doing enrichment activities, it's great opportunity for kids to learn social skills, to build confidence, to learn they're learning a new skill. They're learning to dribble a soccer ball. I think all of those things are just as important as the academic time during after school. And then the third one that I mentioned before is offering families of students served the opportunities for literacy and related educational development. So the adult ed, serving the whole family, is one of the purposes that somewhat gets forgotten. We do a lot of family engagement. I know many schools hold several family engagement activities throughout the year, and those are excellent. And it's great to engage and involve the family, let them know what's going on in school. But we need to make sure we're also serving the whole family. During our family engagement nights, what services are we actually providing to the family during that time? And as I said earlier, that's why that adult education link is in there as a resource. 21st century state goals and indicators. So you'll see these are they are somewhat related to the purposes. So participants demonstrate educational and social benefits. And then programs will offer a broad array of additional services to complement the regular school day. So we have those academic and social, those enrichment activities, and then offering families of participating students opportunities for educational development. And then there are indicators for each of these. So as you're creating your program plan in your application, as you're creating your needs assessment and describing what your goals are as a program, these are goals to keep in mind. Are the goals of your program going to help you meet our state goals of the 21st century programming? Are you going to be able to demonstrate that you're utilizing these indicators? Is important. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, can't hear over the noise. Okay, perfect. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I just realized I didn't have it open. So, okay, so the Utah After School System. This is something we are really lucky to have here. When I go to conferences or I go to meetings with my peers in other states, because every state has 21st century funding. So there is someone who does my job in every state. And when I go to meetings with these people, every single one of them is asking me, how do I do what Utah does? How do I get such collaboration at a state level? We're really lucky that we have the Utah State Board of Education, so myself and Robert Palmer, who runs IGP and PQE, Clinton Merrily. We work very closely with the Utah Education Policy Center. Many of you probably know Camille and Lisa who work there. The Department of Workforce Services Office of Child Care. So Megan and Lori and Trina. And then Utah After School Network, we have Holly and Ben and their whole team of 13 people. And I meet with all of these people at least once a month. I'm meeting with UAN frequently. I'm meeting with Department of Workforce Services, Education Policy Center. I meet individually with them. We meet as whole group. We are always, every time I'm sending out my RFA, I send it to them to get their feedback and perspective. DWS does the same thing. So we really are trying to collaborate, trying to align our efforts. And I promise I've spent some time trying to align our reporting and reduce some of the redundancy in that. Hopefully you'll see some of that in the next year. We do work together and try and collaborate and provide you the best technical assistance possible, the best resources possible. So know that we are always trying to provide you the best services and take your feedback and make sure that things are well aligned between all of our agencies. And it really, really does help the effectiveness of after-school programming in our state. So the details about the grant cycle. Applicants are committing to a 5-year grant cycle. This is a 5-year grant program. The funding available for new grants for this year is I just got the number yesterday, somewhere between $1 million and $1.4 million. I think of closer to 1.4. But that is subject to change, as always. Everything is subject to change. The funding for the 24 to 25 school year starts July 1. You will probably not actually know if you have the grant by July 1, unfortunately. It does get a little confusing that way, but because this is a reimbursement style, come September, October, you can reimburse everything from July, August, September, and get paid for it in October. And it'll end June 30th of 2025. That is something new this year, just for these FY25 funds moving forward, that there will not be any carryover. So you'll get your allotment every year on July 1, and you have till June 30th to spend those dollars. And anything that's left over will be returned to the state, and I will use it for various things. So you have till June 30th to spend the money. And then you'll get a new allotment July 1. So if you don't spend all the money, you're still getting your allotment July 1 of the full amount. The minimum for a new application is $100,000, and that's annually. And the maximum is $400,000. So if you are asking for $100,000 annually, you would get $425,000. We'll get into that in a second. And each organization can only submit one application, but you can have up to 6 sites on that application. So if you are a school district or a community-based organization that has multiple programs, you can apply for up to 6. And this annual amount is for your whole organization, for your whole application. So this $400,000 is not $400,000 per site. It's $400,000 total for your organization. So an example, like I was talking about, so let's say you ask for $100,000 and you get $100,000. Year 1, 2, and 3, you'd get the same amount annually. In year 4, that's reduced by 25%, so you'll get 75%. Then in year 5, it's reduced again by 25% of the original amount, so you're at 50%. And that is to encourage sustainability practices. So this money is not designed for you to just reapply every 5 years. That is somewhat happening, but that is not the purpose, and that is not the intention for you to just reapply for the funds every 5 years. The goal is to help new programs, to help our state have additional programs, to help programs grow, for organizations to say, hey, we've been running 6 programs for the last 10 years, and we want to add 3 more programs. So now we're going to apply for your grant. So that is the purpose of the drop-off in years 4 and 5, that you are expected to run your program to the same quality and caliber and quantity of years 1 through 3 with the reduced funds. So it's up to you to find additional funds to supplement your 21st century funds in years 4 and 5. Grant award responsibilities. So everything that is listed in the program assurances in the application, and I'll go over some new ones in a minute. Implementing all the activities described in your application. So if small changes obviously are fine, but if it comes up for you're working with a school district and the principal at one school says, we really do not want an after-school program anymore. I don't want it here. I don't like it, which unfortunately has happened. And you need to move to a different school. Talk to me about it. That is a very major change to your implementation plan that I need to be aware of and approve before we can continue reimbursing funds for a new site. So if there's major changes like that, please let me know. Program fees are not allowable. This is somewhat new in the last couple of years. It used to be that they were allowable. They no longer are. That was a federal decision. If you would like to have program fees, you actually need to send in an application to the Department of Education and get that approved. So fees, meaning like a registration fee to attend our program, costs $200. That's not allowed. It has to be free for all students. And so that's why it's important that you're applying, and we'll get into this later, but that you create your budget. You tell me how much money you're asking for to run your program. And you can apply up to $400,000 to be able to run a successful program. So apply for the amount of money you need. It will not, if you apply for less money, it will not increase your chances of being awarded. The amount of money is not really taken into account. So apply for what you need to run a quality program so that students can have access free. Attend the annual grant orientation meeting that is held every year, usually in September. It will be virtual, most likely. Time and effort documentation. So we just need brief documentation showing that any staff who are working on your program, that the amount of time they've spent working on a 21st century program is in ratio with the amount of money they're getting. So if you are an administrator and you're working like 50% of your time on 21st century, and the other 50% of your time is working on other programs at your school district or other programs at your CBO, then only 50% of your salary should be coming from 21st century. So usually that's not too difficult, but if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. Follow the unallowable and allowable expenses. We'll get into that later. Collect data on student achievement toward goals and conduct a periodic evaluation. Collect and submit the required 21 APR federal reporting. And I will get into some details about that coming up. For you current grantees, I am also soon going to be sending you a whole bunch of videos describing each indicator on 21 APR. So hopefully it's helpful. I'm really excited about it. Submit annual continuation applications and budget to USBE for approval. That will be in the summer, fall time. Just a continuation I don't like the word application. I meant to change that. Last year I called it a review. Really just a check-in for me to see, are you making progress on your program? Are you making progress on your goals? Are you doing the things you said you would do? And then submitting a budget, which, as a reminder, budgets have always been for 12 months. Some of you are used to carryover, and that was a safety net. It was not designed for you to always depend on the carryover. The budget should be intended for you to use within 12 months. Participate in technical assistance. Last 12 years. Which includes all of the programming that happens at the center. Levi, in response to your question, when I talk about CBOs, I'm normally referring to like nonprofit organizations. For-profit organizations are not eligible for the grant. You could have a fee for students that are not, if you're only using your 21st century to pay for like one classroom, then like students in another classroom could pay a fee, but students who are participating in the program you're using 21st century funds for cannot be paying any fee to participate in the 21st century program. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. Cool. Okay, participate in technical assistance with the Utah After School Network. So this would include filling out the quality tool. It's a self-assessment. I will not see it. I do not see your quality tool. I had a big conversation with Ben and Holly about it last year about whether or not we thought it would be productive for me to see it, and we decided it would not. So I will not see your quality tool. You will not get in trouble if you are putting that you're not doing XYZ things. It is a self-assessment for you to be able to improve your program quality and understand where your weaknesses are in terms of best practices. That is due every fall. It is a very long document. It takes a couple of months to fill out, and hopefully you can get a team together to do that. And then a PQA observation, Right now, those are done only in year 3, but I would suggest reaching out if you're awarded the funds, reach out to UAN and say, hey, can we get a copy of the quality tool and the PQA observation tool so that you know what all the best practices are that we're looking for. And then hopefully you're ready in year 3 when your observation comes and you can get really good scores. And more importantly, be providing quality programming to students. Participate in federal and state evaluations, and then report progress to the community regularly and seek community support. This is one that is really up to you how you want to do that, but is an important part of being a community learning center. This isn't just after school, these are community learning centers for community members to participate, community members to know what's going on, and to come together and all learn together. So a couple of new grant responsibilities. We've already touched on a couple of them. So the first one is, like I said, that there will not be any carryover allowed moving forward. So you'll get your funding every year on July 1st, and you have till June 30th to spend it. Once June 30th passes, you'll have probably till September to submit any final reimbursements for that. So they need to be dated. Any purchases need to be dated before June 30th, and then you'll have till September to submit the reimbursement. And then after that, any leftover funds will be retained by the state. And then I will be able to use those funds to provide supplemental grants, to provide funds for taking your staff to the National After School Conference, for example, maybe something project-based. I'm still working out the details of exactly what we want to do with that. But the reasoning for this is that these federal funds, we have 27 months until they expire and they have to be returned to the state. So it's like July 1st of 2024 through September 30th of 2026. So it's a long time. And until now, we have been allowing grantees to use those funds all the way up until September 30th of 2026. And many grantees are 6 months, they're several months behind in their spending. And so what happens is they still can't get it all spent by September 30th, and then it's all being returned to the federal government. And those dollars are leaving our state unused, and we're not able to use them for anything once September 30th happens. So by giving you only a year, then as the state, we now are able to use those funds to serve students. We're able to use those funds to fund projects and fund professional development, give supplemental grants, and make sure that those funds are being used effectively to serve students. And that's why I really was trying to hammer in before that budgets that are submitted annually should be for 12 months. And even though many of you are used to having carryover into the following year, that wasn't ever intended to be the thing that was relied on and was standard. It was always meant to just be the safety net. And if you're worried that, oh no, we didn't use all of our money, like it's fine. You're not going to be in trouble if you don't use all of your funds in 12 months. And you'll still get your full amount on July 1 to be able to run your program for the next year. So when you're making your budget, it needs to be for that, for the whole year, so that even if you don't spend all your funds in year 1, you're still able to run your whole program in year 2 because you have the amount you were planning on having, that you budgeted for, that you submitted for, that you asked for. Reimbursement requests. So like I said earlier, this is a reimbursement-based grant. So you will spend money and then submit reimbursements. We paid these salaries, we bought these supplies, we paid for this training, and then you'll submit all of that documentation to me through Utah Grants, and you'll be reimbursed for it. Reimbursements should, and now I'm adding in as an assurance that they will be happening every quarter. So you really shouldn't be needing to reimburse things that are more than 3 or 4 months old. You know, if something gets forgotten or lost in your accounting, it's not a problem if you need to tack it on to a later reimbursement, but they should be submitted at least quarterly. And that's another reason for the change in the carryover policy, with the carryover policies being what they were and people not submitting their reimbursements till way late, people not starting using their next year's funding till 6 months later. If there's an accounting issue, we are not able to discover it until 7-8 months later. And if we are submitting our reimbursements on time, we're using our budgets in the time that they're designed to be used in, then any sort of budgetary issues or errors or whatever, we can get it remedied very quickly because it will all be discovered on July 1st. So the next one is very different than what many of you are used to. So if you are a current grantee and you've been tuning out because all of this is not new, please perk up your ears because this is new. The grantee will ensure that all site coordinators at each site will have at least 4 hours a week of administrative time. One thing that I hear from a lot of grantees when they have the quality tool, they have feedback from their PQA, they're doing their 21 APR data, is that site coordinators don't have time for all of this. Site coordinators don't have time to be doing all of this reporting. And my response to that is that we're creating the budget. You as the grantee, as the applicant, are creating the budget and determining how much time things are for and what your site coordinators are being paid and what they're being paid for. So let's work together to create some time for your site coordinators to be able to do all of these reports, or they can use that time to do family engagement and be calling parents, or they can use that hour of administrative time to meet with school day teachers and get feedback from them, get information about students from school day teachers, or meet with school administrators. Whatever it is, this is an hour of time for them to be 4 hours a week, for them to not be with students and to be able to do all of these other things that we know increase program quality. Now, I am allowing grantees every amount of flexibility within 1 week of what these 4 hours are. So it could be that maybe your site coordinator comes an hour early and before program starts, and they're using that hour. It could be that they maybe for some reason you have fewer hours 1 day a week, and so they do all 4 hours 1 day a week, whatever it is. Or if your site coordinator is out of ratio and your site coordinator is not actually the one working with kids all day. I know there are some, it varies from program to program whether or not site coordinators are in ratio. If they are not in ratio, then those 4 hours can just be during program. So they theoretically would meet this requirement very easily. Hopefully a lot of you are already set up that your site coordinator would meet this requirement. It does. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions about that. I know that that is very new, but like I said, I hope that a lot of you are already meeting it. And there are priority points for having a site coordinator who is full-time. And then there are additional, completely separate priority points for having a site coordinator who is out of ratio, that is not being depended on to work directly with youth all of the time. Because I think both of those things help increase our program quality if the site coordinator can be focusing on some of these other things. And then all program sites commit to participate in the quality tool. So that's the self-assessment that's due in the fall, including the action plan. You'll see when you fill out the quality tool that there is a portion that's an action plan. So you're supposed to look at the quality tool, identify where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then in the action plan, set some goals for the year that you can work on for the rest of the year. If you're not filling out the action plan, then the quality tool is useless. Like, why are we even bothering to fill out the quality tool if we're not filling out the action plan? That's the utilization of the quality tool. We fill it out, we analyze it, see where we want to make our goals in the action plan, and then work on them for the rest of the year. So the action plan is required. The PQA observation tool Like I said, that is in year 3. You'll get 1 pre-observation in the fall. If you score above a 4.0, then you're not required to have a post-observation in the spring. If you're below a 4.0, then you would be required to have one. And I know if that's new to you, that won't make any sense, but you'll get there. And then the Align for Success rubric is now a required assessment. Many of you are already doing it through SAQ grants or things like that. It's not nearly as long as the quality tool. It's much shorter. But it will be a required self-assessment at the beginning of the year. Best practice is to get together with your school day. The Align for Success rubric is about school day alignment. So do we have good relationships? Are we sharing information? Are we sharing resources? Are we sharing supplies? Things like that. Is the after school program and the school day, are they actually running together and cohesively as one program, one staff who work together, or do they run completely separately? I have been very disappointed by going to do site visits and I walk into a school and I ask the secretary, like, hey, I'm here to see the after school program. Where are they? Like, and they have no idea. They don't know where the after school program is, or if it is run with a community partner. I've had secretaries tell me we don't have one of those. And I'm like, yes, you do. It's here. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, some community partner runs something over in the cafeteria. That shouldn't be happening. We want to be aligned. We want to be one program because it's their students and it's their building. So they really should be aware and involved. Or even if you're running at a separate location, you run your own club at a separate building, you're at a child care center, how can you align and share information with the schools your students attend? I know it might be more difficult at a separate space, but we still can do what we can to work together and collaborate. And then the program information form, all of these things are submitted through the Utah After School Network. The program information form is due at the end of the school year as kind of a summary. What did we do this year? And they use it, that is used to, they give it to legislators, they give it to senators, they give it to LEAs, everyone so that they can be aware of what's going on in after school in our state. So this is a summary. It's 2 separate sides. So this is one side, this is the other side. So we have monitoring and evaluation, which is more of my role. My role is monitoring and compliance. We'll have the federal 21 APR system, which we'll go into a bit more detail on that. Desk audits will be ongoing throughout the year whenever I'm able to do them. Continuation applications will be due summer, fall time. Program evaluation, really you should be doing that annually. The requirement is that you do one in year 3, that you evaluate whether or not your program is meeting its goals, whether or not you're being effective, whether or not you're having a positive outcome, output on students. So my hope is that you would be doing that annually. But like I said, it's only required in year 3. And then on-site monitoring visits. The monitoring usually will do an annual meeting virtually to go over some things, and you'll be given the monitoring tool ahead of time that has kind of a checklist of here's the things that you should have. You'll be given that ahead of time to kind of get your documents and things together, and then we'll meet virtually. And then after that, if I feel like there's any reason to come to a site visit, I will. That does not mean that site visits mean something bad is happening. I also just like to try and, I don't like sitting in my office all day. I would way rather be in an after school program hanging out with some kids. So do not be scared if I'm coming to do a site visit. It doesn't mean anything bad is happening. And then quality improvement efforts. So like we talked about, technical assistance with the after school network. They are a great training resource that will be ongoing throughout the year. They also will come do site visits occasionally. The PQA observations in year 3, they usually come watch one enrichment activity. So they're not going to come for a whole day or anything like that. They watch one enrichment activity to kind of get a snapshot of your program, and then they'll meet with you and go over all of that with you to give you that feedback. And then the quality tool, like we talked about, is due in the fall, and then the program information form is due in the spring. So federal reporting and period. So we're going to take a bit of a deep dive into these. So federal reporting is unfortunately, and we've been trying to provide the feds with some feedback. They're always asking for the reporting a year behind. So when you, if you're awarded, I obviously will give you all of the details. It is a lot to track. You have to track every activity you do and how long it was, and then which category it falls into, and track every student's attendance in hours. So it can't just be like, check this kid's here today. We need to actually know this kid got here about 3:30 and their parent checked them out early at 4:30. So they were only here for 1 hour today. Because when you turn in your federal reporting, you're going to need to report every single student's attendance in hours. And I know that that sounds really difficult, but I will work with you to create some systems that can make it easier. So things like that will need some demographic data about them. The easiest way to get the demographic data is to get it straight from parents. If you are worried that a school will not give you their grade and their ethnic, like their sex, things on their registration form, then don't go through the school. Just put it on your after school programs registration form and get it straight from parents. And then you don't have to worry about FERPA for that stuff. So that's all required. And then there are some outcomes that unfortunately you probably will need to get from the school. You need a student's state level assessment. So their RISE scores. You need a student's GPA if they're in secondary. ISS if they were in ISS for the year, how many times. And then there is a teacher survey that you need to hand to a teacher. It's literally 2 questions. That's just, did this student improve their classroom behavior? Like yes or no, like kind of a Likert scale. So it's not super hard. It can be somewhat time consuming, but if we get it all done right at the end of the school year, then you have it and you're ready to go for when it's time to report in the fall or the winter, because the feds are asking for this data like 6 months behind. And I know it makes it a little difficult, but if solid practices and processes are in place, then it can be really easy. So periodic evaluation, like I said, that is in year 3 that it's required, but suggested to do it every year. So you must develop and implement a plan described in your application and then evaluate whether it's working based on the principles of effectiveness. So you can use internal or external evaluation. You can hire someone to do the evaluation for you if you're giving them all of your data, or you can do it internally. But between the 21 APR data that you're collecting every year and the PQA evaluation that you're getting in year 3, you already have a lot of data to be able to effectively evaluate whether or not your program is meeting your goals. It's really just learning how to use the data, how to put it into a form that's useful. So for 21 APR, we already went over this. So academic achievement on their state of level test, their GPA, their school day attendance, that's the one I couldn't remember, their behavior, usually measured through in-school suspension, and then student engagement and learning. So these are the things that you're going to need to track every year for all of your students. Allowable and unallowable costs. So we fund out of school time, that is after school, before school, and summer. I cannot fund anything that is during school hours for like school age youth. I can fund a preschool during school hours. That's the loophole. If you need something during school hours, a preschool is how to do that. So obviously we can pay for staff for their benefits if they have them, supplies, materials, equipment, professional development and training, cell phone usages, mileage on vans and buses, the cost to do the evaluation, pre-approved field trips. That's one thing, they need to be pre-approved. The other pre-approved things, t-shirts that should only be used for student safety. So if you need some super bright highlighter yellow shirt because you're walking the kids somewhere on a field trip and you want them to be more visible, something like that. Out of state travel or any sort of like overnight travel, those all require pre-approval by me in writing before you can actually do them. And that requires pre-approval every year. If it's in your application and your application is approved, then I most likely will approve it. But just to make sure that everything is, when I get audited by the feds, when I get monitored, which they tell me will probably be next year, that I have everything documented showing that I reviewed it every year. So it's not hard, not too time consuming to get that approved. And then some food costs. So like I said earlier, we highly recommend getting on the child nutrition program so that they will reimburse you all of your food costs. Healthy snacks and dinners are allowable. But they need, I'm not going to nitpick what's healthy. I think a balanced meal is what's healthy. But candy and prizes are not allowable. Well, prizes are not allowable. Candy, I do allow if it's specifically used in an activity. So my go-to example is always if we are using spaghetti noodles and marshmallows to build towers, and we are learning about some principles of physics, that we need cross beams and triangles. We need our base to be wider so that it's more sturdy. We're learning something while we're doing this activity, and you want to eat some marshmallows and like fun, then that's fine. Like fund the marshmallows, eat the marshmallows. What about shirts for STEAM activities such as tie-dye? I think if it's for an activity like you're tie-dyeing and there's a solid learning objective to the tie-dye, then I would probably approve it. But when in doubt, email me. So like maybe before you buy the t-shirts for the tie-dye, just send me a quick email reminding me of it. But if it's for an activity like that, I would probably allow it. But if I would want to know what the learning objective is and how that's helping you meet the goals of your program as a whole. How are we meeting academic and enrichment goals? Yes, Colton, I think I did misspeak quickly. Dinners are allowable as long as they are healthy and balanced. Like that's why I say please get on the child nutrition program so that they can reimburse. I will say, like, just try to make an effort to do some cheap dinners if you can, like Kids Cafe, things like that. I won't be reimbursing if it's like we're buying pizza every single day. We are buying McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and those types of things every day. I won't be if I can see that that's a pattern, then I will not be reimbursing that. But if I can see that you're making an effort to have reasonably priced and like balanced meals, then yeah, dinners are allowable. I don't like running a grant program where we say we aren't allowed to feed children who need to be fed. That's my preference. So hopefully that clarifies. I'm sorry, I probably misspoke earlier. Unallowable costs are capital expenses, taxes on purchases, anything that is considered purely entertainment. But having worked in after school, I can make an argument that lots of things are educational. Lots of things are, some might say that a Uno is purely for entertainment. And I would tell you that no, I ran a program and we would play Uno and we would practice our multiplication. If I put down a red 7 and someone else put down a red 6, they have to be able to say that 6 times 7 is, what is that, 42? I should know what that is. Is that 42? Someone's nodding, so hopefully I'm right. So I think there's lots of things that someone outside of the out of school time world would be like, that's just entertainment, that we in the out of school time field are very used to pulling educational and learning objectives into an activity. So there might be a time where you submit something and I might email you back and be like, hey, what was this? Can you explain to me what the learning objective was with this purchase? And hopefully you're prepared to say, hey, here's exactly what our learning objective was with that purchase. You don't necessarily need to submit that with every single reimbursement. Just know that it might happen that I might email you back and be like, hey, can you explain this to me so I have all the context? Food for meetings and or trainings, that is not allowable. We want to make sure that if we're spending money on food, that it's really going to the kids. I know donuts at meetings and pizza at meetings is great, but that's not allowable. Like I said, candy or soda, unless you are convincing me that it is used for an activity and was like needed for the activity. Any sort of incentives, toys, prizes, like if you have a little prize box that if their behavior was really good, they can pick out a little toy, is not allowable. Gaming systems, and then t-shirts unless pre-approved and connected to child safety, or like we said with Danielle's example, I would maybe do tie-dye. Okay. Any questions I have not already answered? Okay, cool. We will take a 5-minute break and come back at 10:30. And then we will go into the application process, and hopefully I will go a little faster. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started again. So the grant application process is lengthy. Okay, so here is the basic timeline, and then we'll go into some more detail about each of these dates. So the application was sent out. Today is the bidders conference. The required letter of intent is due April 19th. I have put the link in the chat just a minute ago, letter of intent, and then the link to the Qualtrics form. Honestly, if you want to fill that out right now while you're sitting here listening to me, please go ahead and do. I would much rather have you do it right now and get it done early than forget about it and have it not be in by the 19th. That is a very useful doc. It's pretty short. It should just be kind of your name, the name of the organization, contact information, how many sites you're planning on applying for. And that form, honestly, is mostly just for me to be able to get the required amount of grant readers. We'll get into later that I do not score your grant applications. I do not read them. I try to not even see them until they are scored. And I need to have enough people. So if we're going to have, oh, it looks like the link is not active yet. Oh, so it shouldn't. Well, I'm sorry, everyone. I will go in and fix that immediately when we are done with this meeting. I thought I had it double checked. I created a whole new link too. So I don't know what the issue is, but I will fix that. Thank you for letting me know. My apologies. The Utah grants is not open yet. Since I just got the budget from the feds yesterday, I am starting the process now to work with Utah grants and get it all uploaded. So I will let everyone who attended this meeting and or submits a letter of intent, I will send an email saying, hey, that this is open now. The application, all of your application materials are due May 22nd. That's a Wednesday, which I know a lot of you probably are not used to because it's usually a Friday, but I'm wondering if Wednesday is better. So it's due on a Wednesday. That's right before Memorial Day. And then we'll get into the two parts of the application. And then we will be, well, not we, the grant readers. We'll be reviewing your applications from the 23rd is hopefully when I'll get the 23rd, 24th, I'll get them to them. And then they'll be reviewing them through July, really just as soon as they're done. And then hopefully we will be able to let everyone know on July 8th. These last two dates are subject to change, just whatever we're able to do. I obviously will be awarding people as soon as I can. So I will let you know. So the application process, there are a couple different parts. The first is the letter of intent, which I will fix. Oh, Darlene says she submitted a letter of intent this morning. I'll make sure you all have the right link. The old one was expired, so I made a new one, and I was pretty sure I put the new one in the thing, but apparently I didn't. So I will fix it. But the letter of intent is due the 19th, and then the two-part application is due on May 22nd. So please make sure that you have submitted both parts of the application, and I'll get into what these are. So the two parts are they are both found in Utah grants. I tried to put it all in one place. So the first is your budget and budget narrative in Utah grants. So when you go in, you will search for 24 ASF, no, 25 ASFT. If you're looking for it, that's actually the easiest way, is 25 ASFT. And you'll click that you're intending to apply and get your application all opened. And then you need to create your budget, and it'll line items there in categories like salary, benefits, technical and professional development, supplies, those things, out of indirect costs, those types of things. You'll put your budget and you'll put in a name Oh, okay. Sorry. I think my internet cut for a second. Give some description of like what you're putting in your budget. And then the Qualtrics application. The link to submit your application through Qualtrics will be found in Utah Grants, same as it was last year. I'm hoping that makes it easier, that like you're not trying to keep track of multiple things in multiple websites, that you can just go to Utah Grants and submit it all in there. So there will be a link in the application page to Qualtrics where you will then fill in all of the narrative questions, competitive points. That's where you can upload all of your documentation in there. And both of those things are due by May 22nd. If for some reason you are wanting to apply and you are unable to get both of those things submitted by the 22nd, you can email me and ask for an extension, and I will mostly be doing that on like a case-by-case basis. You know, if I had someone that said my Qualtrics is totally ready, I can submit all that, but I wasn't able to get my budget in due to some technical issues in Utah Grants. So I, granted that person a small extension for like 2 days because that wasn't their fault and they had the majority of it. So plan on getting it all in by the 22nd. But if for some reason you don't, let me know. We can see. As a reminder, it is not open yet. I will let you know when it's open. You might also, I think you can make a setting in Utah Grants, or if you like already have the grant, that it'll send Utah Grants will automatically send you an email that says, hey, this is open. But I will let you know. If you haven't seen it by, the first or second week in May, feel free to send me an email and be like, hey, what's the deal with this? And I will either tell you, yes, it's open, search for 25 ASFT, or I will tell you, I'm so sorry, we haven't been able to get it up yet. Okay, Utah Grants reminders. This is an important one. The first person to start your Utah Grants application is the creator and is the only person who can edit the Utah Grants application. For some larger organizations, I know this can kind of be a hassle because you might have someone who is an accountant who has your Utah Grants licensing and maybe you don't and you're just doing things out of, so it can be complicated. So please keep that in mind. Whoever's account is the one starting, who clicked that like they are interested in the application, is the one who needs to be able to finish it through. So you must complete the budget narrative in Utah Grants. The budget narrative includes itemized details for your own expenses. School districts and charter schools can utilize their indirect cost rate. If you are a nonprofit and you've already been given a federal indirect cost rate for any reason, or USBE, if you have another grant and they've given you an indirect cost rate, please feel free to use that. And then community-based organizations will need to add indirect costs to the other line. Since unfortunately Utah Grants is somewhat made for LEAs, and sometimes the CBOs, it doesn't work quite as well, unfortunately. And then successful submission requires 2-step approval. So the creator must submit the Utah Grants application to their organization's internal approver, and then the internal approver must review and submit it. So 2 people at your organization must be in Utah Grants and labeled as the creator and the internal approver so that they can do that. So hopefully some of you might already have that figured out. Some of you might need to decide who's going to do what. And if you have any questions about how to use Utah Grants or how to get an account or anything like that, feel free to email me. But I honestly, second schools. Okay, I just put in the chat the email address for the Utah Grants Help Desk. His name is Louis. he will be able to help you. I can help you somewhat, but honestly, they kind of discourage me from doing it because your end of Utah grants and my end of Utah grants are very different, and I have never been trained on how to use your end of Utah grants. So I can help you somewhat, but I will probably end up just directing you to this email address anyway. So if you're new to Utah grants, please copy and paste that email address somewhere. Okay, so we can now get into all of the points and things that you'll need to fill out. Well, not all of them. The competitive points can be found in the application that hopefully you all got emailed. If you did not receive a copy of the reference application, I will maybe copy and put this in again so you can all see it. You can go to the 21st Century website on uspe.gov. And if you go to grant application in all the little tabs, the little headings, go to grant application, it will have everything you need. That is also where I will be posting the recording of this video, and the slides and all that will be on the website. So the reference application, it has a PDF right now because uploading a Word document doesn't really work well on the website. So it is a PDF that you can review. If you would like a Word document copy of that, you can email me and I will send it to you. So you can fill out your Word document over the next 2 months, be going over all the questions, all the points, fill it out in there, and then you can copy and paste your answers from whatever document you're working on into Qualtrics when it's time. Because the narrative questions, some of them do require a lot, like a whole page or two to kind of describe everything. And I don't want you typing that all into Qualtrics the day of. So please utilize the reference copy. And it has all of the competitive points listed. If you have any clarifying questions about anything over the next month, please just email me and ask, hey, what does this mean? Does this count as this? And please be patient because sometimes when people ask questions like, does this thing count? I have to like decide and create policy and get it written so that I can keep it consistent. So I won't be going over all the possible priority points today. I'm mostly just going to be going over ones that have changed. I'm going to start right here in the middle because this is the biggest change that is happening this year. It used to be it was a requirement that every single site had above a 40% poverty rate. That is no longer a requirement. I did make it a significant amount of priority points because we still need to be, according to the federal regulations, we as a state and as grantees need to be targeting low-income students. So that's why the priority points are so high. You do still need to provide documentation. If you're wanting these priority points, you still need to provide documentation showing that these are all, these schools or these sites have a poverty rate of 40% or higher. That usually is demonstrated through free or reduced lunch rates. If you have found some other survey or some other documentation from your school, yes, Christy, this will be recorded. Yes, it's recording right now. So, okay, and sent out to everyone and available on the website. So you do need some documentation showing that if you want these points. If one of your sites or however many of your sites are not able to meet this requirement or this priority, you can still apply, but put in your needs assessment and your plan, like demonstrating how you are targeting and prioritizing students who fall below the poverty line, and or who have the most need. So hopefully that is good news to a lot of you. It will, yeah, it will change some things, but I'm hoping that it allows more people to be able to apply and utilize the funds and meet student needs. These top two competitive points, so applications that have never been awarded a 21st century grant and applications that were not awarded last year, those are the same, but they are worth slightly more points now. Because like I said earlier, I don't love the idea of just funding the same programs over and over and over and over again. And I'm trying to create some diversity. Competitive points. So all proposed programs meet these things. The program staff includes a site coordinator that's out of ratio. That's the new one I discussed earlier. So there are still priority points if your site coordinator is full-time. And then you can get priority points if your site coordinator is out of ratio. And those are two entirely separate points, since you can have one without the other, or you could have both. And then competitive priority points for one proposed program site. This one is very different and it might annoy some of you. But please recognize that this one is only for current 23 to 24 grantees. So if you are not a current grantee with this grant, you just don't even do number 7. Don't even worry about it. You can just put like NA and not worry about it. This one is on the honor system. It is that during the 23 to 24 school year, the grantee asked for an extension or did not submit at least 2 of the required reports. So your quality tool, your continuation review, your budget, your 21 APR data, your program information form. If for at least 2 of those, you requested an extension, then you'll put yes, that you requested an extension, and it will actually be worth -3 priority points. And it would just be -3 if at least one program site did it, then that's -3, and then you're done. If you had to request an extension for every single one of your 10 sites, it would still just be the one -3. It wouldn't be -30. That is new. It is something that is done similarly in other states. It is really just to reward grantees who get their documentation in on time and who are meeting all of the requirements and doing what they're supposed to be doing without me having to track them down every time something is due and be like, hey, this thing is late, please get it to me. Really just trying to reward those grantees that are on top of things. So it is on the honor system. I do track if you are turning your things in on time so that I can evaluate risk assessments and things like that, but I cannot be contributing anything to your application. So it is on the honor system if you remember or not whether or not you asked for an extension. And then the grant readers will just be accounting for that appropriately. So I know that will be a little bit confusing, and it is a little confusing that it's negative points, but I will make sure the grant readers have all the training they need on that so that everything is accounted for appropriately. Narrative questions, they are mostly all the same as previous years. The needs assessment and the project design are obviously worth a lot of points. Principles of effectiveness, and so all the information you need for that is in the reference application. So all of the details for how to complete these questions, the sub questions, the rubric is all in the reference document that hopefully you were emailed. If you were not emailed it, please go to the website and you can get a copy. And then once again, if you'd like a Word document copy and you don't already have one, please email me and I will just email one to you because it just doesn't work to put it on the website very easily. So the grant readers are given the same rubric. They're really just given a reference copy, the same one you are, and they use those rubrics to score your application. So everything you need is in there. Program evaluation. So how in year 3 required are you going to evaluate your program? Are you going to evaluate it every year? Not that it's required, but is a best practice. The new one that I want to point out is data reporting and continuous improvement. So this is basically asking there used to be a sub question on program evaluation about how you were going to get your 21 APR data in. I basically took that and made it its own question and added a couple of things. So how are you going to be collecting all your data? How are you going to complete your quality tool and the alignment rubric and the program information form and your 21 APR data? What are the processes you are planning on putting in place to collect and track that data, to store that data, and to actually submit those reports and assessments, especially since if we remember, 21 APR data is always submitted like a whole year behind. You collect it the summer and school year, and then it's not till the next school year, like fall and winter, that they're actually asking for it. So your data needs to be stored somewhere. If you can collect all of it by the end of the school year, which most of it you can, it needs to be stored somewhere that if the grant admin or a site coordinator or your data specialist, if anyone leaves and there's a transition, there's turnover, that you still have access to that data. So that is now a narrative question that you'll need to explain. What are your processes in place for doing all of that? Academic achievement. So how are you helping students achieve academics? Program components. So picking kind of some specific enrichment things to focus on. Inclusion. How are we including students with diverse needs? Family engagement, travel and safety, professional development and continuous improvement. Continuation. How are you going to continue your program when your grant is over, when you're in years 4 and 5? And then budget. So most of this is the same as previous years. There are not major changes to the vast majority of it. Just the addition of this data reporting and continuous improvement chunk. And these are the ones that it might take you the whole month between now and May to get this all written out. So a summary of the application elements that we went through before. So number 1, submit your letter of intent. On Qualtrics, I will make sure that that link is working. My apologies for that. And when I send out the recording and slides, I'll make sure to have the updated link. There should also be a link on the website, I think. So maybe try that one. If someone tries it and it doesn't work, let me know. So you'll need to submit your letter of intent by April 19th. It's super easy. If you submit the letter of intent, it's not a legally binding contract. If you end up not applying, like, it's fine. Okay, Nicole, I have a little question about the character count last year's summer questions were to submit and shown. Okay, yes, excellent question, Nicole, because I also noticed that they were different. I've only been doing this a year and I had to update all of the documents and things. Some things got missed last year. The character counts in the reference application are accurate. And I went through last week and updated the Qualtrics, everything in Qualtrics. So that will be accurate. So it should be, some of them are 8,000 and then a lot of them are down to 6,000. Because 10,000 characters is a lot. It's multiple pages and that's a lot for you to do and a lot for, then I have to go through and download them from Qualtrics and like make them readable because Qualtrics does not spit them out in a easily readable manner. And so they need to be like reformatted to then make it readable for the grant readers, and it's a lot. So it's just a lot of work on everyone. So I did reduce some of the character limits. If you are creating your application and you think that the character limits are too low and you're like, Savannah, we cannot get across our message in this character limit, let me know. I would love that feedback to know if they're too low or not. I would imagine that most people are not hitting 10,000 characters, but I did not double check like last year's applications. So, excellent question, Nicole. So letter of intent, not a legally binding contract. If you submit a letter of intent and don't end up applying, no, like it won't matter. The most that will happen is I might email, you might get some emails about like, hey, remember that this is due. Like, don't worry about it. But if you want to apply, please fill it out. Submit your budget in Utah Grants. So you'll log into Utah Grants. Here are some instructions. There is a page on the USBE website that is the Utah Grants, and it has a whole bunch of like PDF guides you can read about how to do certain things in Utah Grants. So you'll go into Utah Grants and submit your budget. And then once you're in Utah Grants, as a reminder, the Qualtrics link will be embedded in the Utah Grants application. You might have to go to like a different page. There's like, I think an attachments tab or something like that, where the link will be listed. If you can't find the link, feel free to email it to me. But no, you might have to like click over once you're in the application, you might have to click to like an attachments or a required documents or something like that to find the link. And then it will, so it'll open Qualtrics, and then you can copy and paste all of the responses you've prepared from your reference document or whatever document you're using. You don't have to put it in the reference document. From whatever document you've been using to prepare your responses, you can copy and paste them into Qualtrics. And then if there's any other documents you need to be uploading, then you can upload them straight into Qualtrics, and then I will get them to the grant writers. And I will send a quick email to everyone who filled out the letter of intent on May 23rd, most likely, to say whether or not we received your application. Okay. So grant scoring process really briefly. There are 244 total points possible. Like I said, I do not score them. So sometimes people in their emails or phone calls will try and kind of tell me like, oh, we really need these funds. We're so grateful. And like, I always appreciate your gratitude, but please know any words to myself about how much you need the money will not be taken into account because I do not score them. So your application will be given to a group of scorers, at least 3, and they will all score it individually using the rubrics in the reference copy. Then after their scores are documented, they come together in a small meeting and review all of the scores. If they are reasonably close, usually within like 3 points or so, then they just average them. If there are any major discrepancies, like you scored them, one person scored them a 9 out of 10 and the other person scored them a 3 out of 10, then they will have some conversations to make sure that 1, they are all understanding the intent of the question correctly or similarly. 2, that they are all understanding the rubric in the same way. And 3, that they are all understanding your response, your answer in the same way. It might be that maybe one of them misinterpreted something in the rubric or misinterpreted something in your application, and that's why they're scored so differently. This is a 9 and this is a 3. So they'll have those conversations and see if anyone wants to alter their scores to be a little closer. They don't always end up the same. And then once that all is done, those scores are averaged for each question and then totaled. And then when we are awarding the funds, we just go through the highest totals and just go through until we're out of money. So I cannot say, I'm going to award 6 programs or 4 or 10. It really just depends on how people score and how much money they're asking for, because we as a state allow you all the freedom to tell us how much money you're applying for. If the first 4 applicants all apply for $400,000, the max, then we're only funding maybe 3.5 applicants. Whereas if the top applicants are all asking for 100 or 200, then we obviously can fund a lot more. So there might be some partial awards toward the bottom of that range. You do have the right to ask for your scores and any comments the grant readers leave. I did notice last year when I went through and were giving people comments that it seemed like the grant readers weren't very detailed. So I think I will be giving some grant readers some feedback to maybe leave a bit more feedback in detail so that it's helpful to you. And yeah, that's it for the grant scoring process. You will be notified if you're awarded through email. You'll get an email from me saying, congrats, you've been awarded. Here's the amount you've been awarded for. And then you'll need to respond to that email to say that you're agreeing to the funds. I'll also have some language in there that says you are agreeing to all of the assurances and responsibilities. And then once it is all official in Utah Grants, you'll get a contract again in a grant award notice from Utah Grants directly as well that has all the details. Okay, so we are done. That is it. Everything is due May 22nd. Are there any other questions before we leave today? Okay, excellent. Well, I will get this recording sent out and the slides. I will make sure the letter of intent link is correct. And as always, if you have any questions, any concerns at all, please feel free to email me. My email address is right here, savannahhunt@schools.utah.gov. I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful end of the school year. And please let me know if you need anything between now and May 22nd.